Well, my name's Douglas Dietrich, and I'm a former Department of Defense research librarian, and I had a responsibility for document destruction for many years, about 10 years. So I've had the great fortune of being able to appear on national online radio and national radio speaking, addressing issues concerning documents I've destroyed. So there's been some real firestorms of controversy in terms of some of the sacred cows that have been upset in terms of ufology. So hopefully inroads will continue to be made in the ufological community concerning such subjects. But that's pretty much a summary of the background as how I got connected with this particular kind of environment. I would like to emphasize that I don't normally dress like this. I do, with what I've worked with and with some of what I've seen. As a matter of fact, I would say that time travel has to be realized in order for space travel to be realized. Mm-hmm. But in terms of why time is so important in terms of trying to deal with the ufological community, many people have a kind of 1950s or kind of retroactive kind of perspective that goes back to Eric von Daniken, where they feel that aliens are visiting us with very liquid fuel or solid fuel rocket type technology. They have this, and this is where the controversy came in with what I spoke about Roswell. They have this like mechanical view of star travel where bits and pieces can be left.
Yes.
Now, if you look back in time, meaning if you look into space, all that we see is the past, because everything is so distant. It takes millions of years for the light of the stars to reach us. Even our closest star, Alpha Centauri, 4 light years away, we only see it as it was 4 years ago. So there's no way we can look into the future, but everything we see in the past is dead. There are no signals. There's nothing that we're seeing, and yet Earth, we know this, just in terms of radio signals alone, is brighter than the sun. So if there were any civilization out there, it would be like
a beacon.
It would be like living next door to somebody with a boombox, and we're not hearing anything. But I feel that if we could look into the future, we would see a universe that's teeming with life. And so I certainly am convinced that undeniably there's ufological phenomena that's going on constantly. And there are people that are experiencing things that at this point I have to acknowledge. So I would say that it has to be coming from the future. And the people who are populating the future, and I use that term people pointedly, it has to be us. And I feel that in the future we have colonized the universe. We have extended ourselves, but they always have to come back here because we're the genetic baseline. Because they need that genetic material in order to take care of whatever diseases, whatever adaptations that they're contending with out there. Because anything else, if we had a universe teeming with life right now, there would be no need for the millions, and there's literally like millions of people in the world who believe that they've had an experience, either a sighting or an abduction. Why would they all come here if this planet might be unusual, but if the universe were teeming with life, then it wouldn't be. So we have to accept the fact by seeing what we see in the universe now, it has to be from the future. And so since time is a dimension, and it's the fourth dimension, we have to think of it also in that term, because if we're in the third dimension, all of our shadows are two-dimensional. So anything coming from the fourth dimension, its shadows to us would be solid and three-dimensional. So even if we're simply seeing shadows from the fourth dimension, they're going to be solid, they're going to be like matter to us. And on a two-dimensional plane, two-dimensional beings couldn't see us. We could put our fingers down, they'd see 5 separate entities. If we put our entire hand down, they would see one huge entity. So that's why we see these changes in shape, changes in morphology of so much of this phenomena, literally as it's coming in out of the fourth dimension. So that's how I would approach that one aspect of time travel. On a personal level, I would have to say the closest thing would be the John Titor story, in terms of when I worked with the Department of Defense, I tried to incorporate myself into several different think tanks as a career segue. And so I would do trends forecasting. And so when I did trends forecasting to try and get into these think tanks, in the end, I wasn't able to make that career change because most think tanks make a their money out of telling their clients, including the U.S. government, what those clients want to hear. And so the trends that I kept forecasting were not what the U.S. government or what anyone wanted to hear. I was predicting future civil war. I was trending everything into this inevitability of geopolitics. That was pretty much mirrored by the John Titor story. So in terms of that and several of the other factors that John Titor came up with, I tend to think that he was a real phenomena. I tend to think that for anyone who's not familiar with the John Titor phenomena, certainly this crew could probably explain it to them, but John Titor, I think personally, probably came back to alter this timeline as much as he could. He probably hated where he came from because it was a religiously fundamentalist America that he came from that was antithetical to genetic engineering, antithetical to biological research. And so people probably had very short lifespans. People probably weren't treated for a number of medical illnesses or handicaps they could have been treated for. And I think he was probably personally impacted in some way by that through a relative or a loved one. And he probably took advantage of his position to come back and at least change a timeline. And so that would be my take on it at this point in history. So I do feel that even though our universe is probably empty except for us until we fill it, there's probably multiple time tracks. But in terms of most of the universes, they're probably not conducive to life. But we, from this one universe, probably have an almost infinite number of time tracks, and this future where we produce an almost infinite number of probably humanoid-like evolutionary adaptations to other environments. So that would be my take on that.